Hello and welcome back to Pete's Classic Cycle. Pete here, and today is the long-awaited day where I finally fixed the electrical gremlins on my 1972 Kawasaki H2. Now, some of you may recall that last year during the summer, I ran into a bit of an issue with this bike where my entire electrical system just failed. Like a light switch, shut off, dead, left me stranded at the side of the road. You know, I tried swapping out the various components, I tried various diagnostic tests, and to be perfectly frank, none of them were successful, at least for me. As a lot of you may know, whether you're a professional mechanic or a backyard hobbyist like myself, a lot of the times these electrical issues can be more like gremlins, always hiding, causing mischief, hard to track down, and it's definitely not my forte. I'm more of a mechanical guy where you see the problem, you fix the problem, and you're on your way. Electrical stuff is a little foreign for me, and I'm still learning, which is where I enlisted the help of the experts at Rick's Motorsports Electrics. They are industry leaders in their field. They've been in the game for decades and are incredibly passionate about producing the best products possible to get your vintage machines back on the road or on the trails. So going down the line here, I want to show you some of the components that I got from Rick's. So starting off here is my original Stator that's been rebuilt. This is actually probably the thing I'm most excited for. Looking at the back here, it's got all brand new coils and windings, all brand new harness, new rubber fittings. The hardware, the entire assembly was taken apart, replated, all brand new hardware. All the connections are awesome, done to original spec. And one of the coolest things about this has got to be these billet CNC triggers that they have. These things are super trick, and they replace the original plastic ones. And one quick little fun fact about these billet triggers here is that they're actually machined at another New Hampshire company called Vintage Performance, where I highly recommend you pause this video, go look up their website, and you'll see they do a whole array of custom performance billet cylinder heads along with other race parts for vintage motorcycles. So go ahead, check them out. I just thought I'd share that with you. I thought that was a cool little side note. Moving on here, we've got Rick's brand new CDI unit for the Kawasaki H2. This replaces the original one you see here. This has the three individual CDIs with the extra rectifier box on the side. So basically all of the original components from there are condensed into this one beautiful brushed stainless steel box. Again, all the connections are to original OEM spec, really clean, really sleek. And last but not least is a brand new Rectifier Regulator, which again replaces this original unit. Again, all the connections are original, and it's just another nice, modern, clean component. Now, one thing I really love about the Rick setup, unlike my last ignition project, which was converting points to digital, this is a direct plug and play. There's no fiddling, there's no custom connections that you have to do. Literally, you take the old parts off, you bolt these new ones on. It's that simple. The only thing you really have to play with is resetting the timing for your stator, but that's something you would have to do regardless after any service work, so that's not even an issue at all. Now, I know a lot of you Kawasaki triple enthusiasts are used to dealing with Jim Hobbs at Lakeland Performance. Well, a lot of you may know that Jim retired his business a couple years ago. Well, he actually sold all of his plans and everything to Rick's. So this CDI that you see here is basically a continuation of the Lakeland Performance box, which was probably the most popular aftermarket CDI with the Kawasaki triple guys. So for anybody who's a little skeptical about trying a new company, guys, again, Rick's has been around for decades, and this box here, again, continuation off of what Jim Hobbs had already perfected, only better with manpower and knowledge that Rick's has to support this product. Now to address the one elephant in the room. What if you're restoring your bike to a 1,000-point concourse restoration and you don't want this modern stainless steel box underneath your seat? Well, you know what? In that case, this might not be the answer for you. But if you want to ride and enjoy these bikes, I definitely recommend getting one of these boxes. These are absolutely incredible. The modern CDIs are amazing. They're built to the original Kawasaki schematics, but using modern, robust, and reliable components, meaning this thing's not going to leave you stranded. The simple fact of the matter is the original ignitions over the 50 some odd years that they've been around they wear out and they fail, and they can fail without warning. It's happened to me on this bike and on other bikes, and it can happen to any one of you guys, which is why I highly recommend that if you want the reliability to take these bikes out and enjoy them and not worry about parts failing, getting the modern Rix ignition is the answer. And again, these are all bolt-on parts, so if you end up wanting to take this thing to a concours show or sell it at an auction, something down the road, you can always just swap these components out for the original ones. Now, I could probably stand here and talk about how much I love these parts all day long, but the simple fact is, I'm sure you don't want to hear it. I've been staring at these things for months and I'm dying to get them in the bike. So let's pop the seat, pull the tank off, get them in the bike so I can finally enjoy this thing as I intended when I built it so many years ago. With all the original parts removed, it is now time to start to install the new parts from Rix, beginning with the regulator rectifier. Now, the only thing I had to do to this part to make it fit was to pull the ground wire out of the sheathing. And that's simply because on the bike, the ground wire is separate from the rest of the harness and grounds to the back of the battery box, while the rest of the harness goes to the front of the battery box to connect to the rest of the ignition. One nice thing I have to say right off the bat is the new compact unit from Rix is much easier to install than the original. Now, whenever you're doing work on the bike like this is always a good time to go ahead and make sure that all your ground connections are clean, ensuring you got a nice proper ground. The next thing to install is my new CDI. Now, I'm not going to show too much detail how this goes. Again, it's direct plug and play. If you can pull the old one off, you can put the new one on. Now, to be perfectly honest, I have wanted one of these for an incredibly long time, probably ever since I actually started building the bike. So right here, right now, is an incredibly special moment for me. Look at that. That's absolutely gorgeous. It's not even bolted in yet. Now again, when you're working on certain parts of the bikes, there's definitely things you want to look over. And one of the things in this area is making sure that your vent tube for your oil tank is routed correctly. A lot of people like to route it underneath the frame, which is actually incorrect. The proper routing is like this, over the top of the frame. Reason being is if it goes underneath the frame, it is possible to kink, which could cause an issue with the oil flow, causing the motor to seize. This is how it was intended from factory. And there's actually this nice little part here that clips in with one of the mounting screws for the ignition and just holds the line in place like so. Perfect. Now, another thing I really have to give Rix credit for is how they mark all the different ignition cables. I've never actually seen it like this. It was underneath the insulation. Unlike the original harnesses that came on these bikes, so that was just like a wraparound sticker that often fell off. That is going to stay there forever. So really cool to see that. That's a first time for me. Center to center, right to right, and left to left. Now to install the stator. I'm going to be very careful not to kick the motor over at this point because I don't know exactly where those triggers are set. I don't want to knock anything or smash anything. Now, one thing to note, the neutral wire here did not have the end of it stripped. So I went ahead and stripped it and then dipped the tip in solder as it would have come from factory. So it's nice, easy install. You don't have to worry about the wires fraying or anything, making it hard to get into the neutral switch. Go ahead and thread the harness through. So next up, I've just got to route this stuff up underneath the seat here, where I'll then be able to connect it to everything, make sure it's routed nice and neatly, and that would conclude the installation of the Rix parts, of course with the exception of setting the timing, which I'm going to be doing next. So moving on to setting the timing on this bike, I'm going to be following the manual step by step. That way there's no discrepancy and everybody at home can follow the exact same steps that I did to keep it nice and simple. So I've already got all my tools laid out. The bike is on the lift, ready to go. So I'm going to pull the gas tank off and get started on setting the timing. So the first two steps of the process talk about checking the timing using a traditional timing light. We're not going to be doing that because I know for a fact the timing is out of whack because it's completely rebuilt, disassembled, and reassembled. So I'm going to skip right down to step number 3, where we set the gap between the triggers and the rotor, and then manually start to set the timing from there. Okay, so following step 3 here says turn the engine over so that the magnetic projection on the rotor is aligned with any one of the pickup coils. Check the gap between the two. Correct gap is between 0.5 and 0.8 millimeters or 0.02 and 0.031 inches. If adjustment is necessary, loosen the 2 coil mounting screws and move the coil so that the gap is correct. Then secure the screws and repeat the procedure with the other 2 pickups. So I've already got a feeler gauge to 0.026 inches, which is kind of right in the middle of the tolerance. Just moving very slowly in case there were any interference issues. And as we look, that is a huge gap. Loosen off these screws here. Oh, I absolutely love these triggers. Okay, get that gap closed. Tighten that down. One thing to keep in mind, there are 2 separate magnetic projections on the rotor here. So when you're using your feeler gauge, don't just go to the first one. Make sure you're all the way through to the second one, just to make sure that everything is good. And I'm glad that I'm doing this step, because like I said, that gap was mighty big right from Rex, which makes sense because they're not setting the timing on their bench, and they probably want to leave as much room as possible so you don't smash or burn your triggers just on the install. So moving on to step number 4 in the instructions, it says insert dial gauge into the left cylinder and set piston to 3.13 or 0.123 inches before top dead center. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got my trusty dial gauge here. I'm going to start to thread that in. So I'm just going ahead, turning the crank over slowly, looking for top dead center, at which point I'm going to zero the gauge and then dial it back 3.13 millimeters as per the manual. All right, so it looks like that's it. Yeah, see now it's starting to back off. Dial it back. Okay, let's get that back in the top dead center. All right. So there we have our top dead center. I'm gonna zero this. And now I'm gonna dial it back 3.13 millimeters. So very slowly here. Just gonna start to dial that back. There's 1, 2, 3.13 is right. Basically, right there. So next up it says check that the timing pointer is in line with the L mark on the rotor. If it is not, bend the pointer so that the alignment is achieved. Now it might be a little hard to tell, but it's actually off by like millimeters. Maybe 2 millimeters, that's it. So I'm just gonna take my pliers here, bend it. I don't know if you can see in camera, but the tip of the alignment mark is directly aligned now with the L mark. Next step, step number 6, is a bit of a big one. So it says turn the rotor slightly so that the S mark for the left cylinder aligns with the timing pointer. When this is done, note that the trailing edge of the rotor's magnetic projection should be aligned with the mark on the pickup coil for the left cylinder. If these marks are not aligned, loosen the 2 pickup coil mounting plate screws and move the coil in the direction necessary to align the marks. When the S mark is aligned with the timing pointer and the trailing edge of the magnetic projection is aligned with the mark on the pickup coil, the timing is correct for the left cylinder. So they're talking about this projection here aligning up with that mark there on the coil. Let's move the rotor so that the marker is in line with the S. It's ever so slightly. There we go. And as we look here, the trailing edge of the magnetic projection is in line with that mark. All right, well, continuing with story time here, step number 7 says timing for the remaining 2 cylinders must be checked as well. Since the timing pointer was set correctly in step 5, it is only necessary to align the S mark for the right and center cylinders with the timing pointer and check the alignment of the trailing edge of the rotor projection and the timing mark on top of each pickup coil. If adjustment is necessary, loosen the pickup coil mounting plate screws and move the coil as necessary to affect timing. So that's handy. We don't have to move the dial gauge or any of that stuff at all. As per the instructions, we're just going to rotate the rotor coil by coil, ensure that the S mark is lined up, and then again that the trailing edge of the magnetic projection is lined up with the little mark on the trigger there. Again, just going to rotate this until the S mark is in line with that timing marker. Just like so. And as you can see, the mark on the trigger is not quite lined up with the trailing edge of the magnetic projection. So again, I'm gonna have to loosen off these 2 screws here and make my adjustments. So red mode there looks good to me. So that concludes setting the timing for the stator. The only step left remaining is step number 8, which is after checking timing on all 3 cylinders, check dynamic timing with a strobe light. But before I go ahead and do that, I'm gonna have to get the bike back together, get the battery in it, get the fuel tank on it, go over a couple other things, but I'm really excited to see how this thing runs with the new ignition from Rick's Motorsport Electrics. Now, if you have a keen eye, I'm sure you notice I still have the original coils on this bike, and you might be wondering why. I just didn't mention it earlier because it's the Rick's ignition that I really want to showcase in this video, but I do have a set of brand new coils that I did order for the bike. These actually came from z1parts.net. I'll be moving ahead with the installation of these right now, but like I said, it was really the Rick's ignition that I wanted to showcase in this video. But either way, these are going to go on the bike right now, which will give me a complete 100% brand new ignition on this H2 front to back. Now moving on to installing the ignition coils, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's simple plug and play type stuff. Just 2 things to keep in mind are the ground wires. Make sure that you've got a nice, clean, and secure ground, and keep track of which power cable goes to which individual coil. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the original labels can fall off of these harnesses. So take the time to label them as you disconnect them from each coil. And if you lose track of which cable went where, simply take a voltage meter or multimeter and check the connectivity between the front and the back where it plugs into the CDI, and that will tell you exactly which coil each wire goes into. Do not guess. because if you get it wrong, you will get a misfire on your motor and the bike will not run properly.
A few moments later.
Well, that concludes the installation of the ignition coils. Really happy with that. Just simple plug and play, really nice and clean. I made sure to keep all the ground wires kind of tucked away down the center here, so there's not like a big bird's nest sticking out of all the coils. Everything is nice, neat, and compact. So all that's left to do is get the fuel tank back on the bike, run some extra fuel lines, and then we should be ready to fire this thing up. Well, as you can see, the bike is back together, so all that's left to do is hit the fuel switch, kick it over a couple times, and hopefully that fixed all the issues on this bike. So let's go ahead and do that right now.
It's alive! It's alive! Oh! I'm holding back the tears. That's amazing. Wow. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Unbelievable. It worked. Ignition from Rick's Motorsport Electrics. Cured the mystery issue with my H2. I'm so incredibly happy right now. Oh, it's been a long time. It's awesome. Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you.
So with the installation of the Rick's ignition finished, there's really only one thing left for me to do. So once again, a huge thank you to the entire team at Rick's Motorsport Electrics for creating these amazing products and helping get my H2 and many other H2s back on the road. Thank you very much, Rick. And as always, please ride safe.